Hey,
Are we
Yeah.
good?
I look like Phil
Hello.
tonight.
Hi,
Yeah,
Phil.
you do.
I dressed
Hi,
up
Phil.
like Phil.
Yeah, so Phil aged. I don't know how many years. I'm not going to try because I don't want to be offensive. So I'm just going to say Phil aged. That's all I'm going to say. And he grew his hair out.
Hey, look.
Hello, everybody. Sanctuary and anyone else who's watching/listening, depending on how you like to take your podcasts. Here we go. So as you can tell, Larry is in the place of Phil today. Larry, how you doing?
I'm doing good. And you want to see yourself being engineered? Here, look.
Yeah.
Ooh, look at that. Look at that.
There you go.
Oh,
So that's the show
cool.
being. Yeah.
Just
so
like
feasting. So this is what you guys look like here. Well, this is what I see.
look.
So if you see me looking to the right, I am listening and attempting to multitask.
He's doing this on the fly. Like this is the man. This is the man, the myth, the legend, the dude. we got Gandalf and the dude both in the same chat. I don't know how we do that, but yeah. So today, as you could tell, if you watched last week, we did the first 3 episodes in release order. So 4, 5, 6 of Star Wars, and we talked about those with Phil. We figured we wanted to wait to talk about the prequels again when Phil comes back. But I thought, hey, since we have 2 older gentlemen in this, or in other words, very wise gentlemen in this this group today, I figured it'd be really interesting to see people who grew up with Star Wars, the originals, to see what they felt like when they saw the prequels for the first time. So, Steve, what was your first reaction? Let's start with this. What was your reaction when you saw the trailer for The Phantom Menace?
When I saw the trailer, I was thrilled because Star Wars was a massive part of growing up, and it looked really exciting, but it sort of left me. It left me wondering why there was there seemed such a big gap between the
release order?
No. The special effects in the first 3 were phenomenal.
Yes.
And it
with lots of little models too, and
yeah,
they
and
overdid it. I think.
Yes.
Yeah, it sort of left me cold, the first one of the second trilogy, in that they didn't seem to go as far with the special effects as they had in the first 3. The first 3 still stand out for me in terms of special effects, and they seem unsurpassable. And it should be the other way around, but it's not.
I think it was because Lucas went nutso because he could, and he was able, and okay, let's say 21 years ago, CGI was believable. It happened with Jurassic Park, right?
Yeah.
That was like the first one where you went, wow, this is believable, and not like, roll your eyes kind of like, this is dumb.
Mm-hmm.
But Mary and I, after you guys did this episode, we binge watched together. We watched episode 2 and 3. I said 1 and 2. We watched episode 2 and 3, and then watched all of the legacy behind the scenes of Mandalorian.
Yeah.
And it really kind of got into the story of, I don't know. I love Favreau. I love listening to them and all the directors that are part of that show. But Mary and I were watching a couple of battle scenes, right? And she's like, I'm getting a headache. This is like, she's like, I feel like I'm going to have a seizure. It's too much. And if you really try and take in, like, okay, the battle scene in episode 2, where they're in the big arena.
Yeah.
And they had so much going on there. And then all of the Jedis come in and this big war breaks out. And it was just, it was like visually. And I get, because Lucas wanted his vision versus what came out in the first 3 films, we all know weren't enough for him because he redid those when stuff started to advance. But I just think he was so excited that he maybe they overdid it a little.
Yeah, well, and I agree with that too, because I was rewatching the Lord of the Rings movies not that long ago, and they came out around the same time as the prequels did. Yeah. And I think one of my biggest pet peeves about the CGI of the prequels is the fact that all of the clone troopers are CGI. None of them
All
are
of them.
real
Yeah. All
practical.
of them. Yeah.
Whereas you look in the old movies, like what Steve was saying, the old ones were so good. They actually had a whole bunch of like stormtroopers
Yeah.
in the armor and stuff. And the reason why I bring up Lord of the Rings is because like there are some CGI moments for the armies, but for the most part, they just dress up a bunch of dudes in armor and they're like,
Yeah.
"Let's do it."
Yeah.
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 Like,
I
what the
like
heck?
that.
But
It's-
so let's the actual movie. So like Steve, when you watched Phantom Menace, when you got
Yeah.
let's say I don't know if you saw it in the theater or DVD, but when you were done watching it, were
I've seen
you
them all in theater.
okay? So theater, the credits just go up, and you're all like, are you angry? Are you mad? Are you sad? Explain your deepest thoughts.
I wasn't any of those things. It was just a film, and it was all right, but it wasn't startling. I mean, I've maybe watched episode 1 3 or 4 times,
Okay.
whereas I've watched the first 3 countless times. I've actually worn a DVD out with them.
Okay.
It's in essence, it's like today on TV was The Hobbit, and my wife was like, "Why aren't you putting The Hobbit on?" Because every time the Lord of the Rings comes on, it doesn't matter where it is or when I turn on to it, I'm always watching it. And it's the same sort of effect. I'm thoroughly taken up with Lord of the Rings and thoroughly taken up with the first 3 episodes, but the others, not so much.
Okay. Yeah, I get that. It's just interesting because you hear so many people who got who were had a very negative reaction. Larry, how did you feel about it?
I left feeling a little bit of emptiness to the story. A
Okay.
little bit. I liked how they started to tie other things together, but there was just something to a level of deepness to the dialogue that seemed, I don't know, left me just wanting more or wishing it was different. Now,
Yeah.
I gotta say, now, I was 8 when the first movie came out, and now this movie comes out, and my son is 4. My son Jacob.
Yeah.
And he had already, I would play those movies all the time. I was hoping he would be into it, and he was. He called Darth Maul, and he would do this, hey, Dad, the blood guy. He didn't know his name, and he would do this thing on his face to describe him. He's my favorite. And so that was like where my real joy came from, I think, from the movie, is that it was where, Jake and I watched that together really young, and that was special. So
That's awesome.
And now he's the one. He actually pays for my subscription now to Disney. So
Look at that.
So
yeah,
you see what I mean?
My daughter pays for our subscription.
Yeah, I know he creeps. He's on my Netflix, so it kind of washes out. So
yeah,
there you go.
But
No,
that
that's so
was-
awesome
but that was
that you
cool.
get to
yeah.
share that.
Yeah, and he always, loved the old films too. So,
yeah.
but I don't know. Just me personally, it was just a little lacking. And like I said, after we recorded you guys a couple weeks ago, and I had surgery, so I was laying low for a couple days, and we binge watched together. And Mary's a couple times like, yeah, it's great, but this is too much. The scenes in episode 3 in the beginning, where they're in space and jumping around Coruscant, with the cities and just so much. She said it's too much for me to process.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I
mean,
mean,
it's just one way to look at it.
The scenes that I probably enjoyed the most were the pod racing scenes.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed those for all the integral people in and around those scenes. But the same sort of thing as Larry was just saying about this, some of the pod racing scenes where it's almost as if it's making your vision blurred on the peripheries
Mhm.
Yeah.
and it's sort of freaking your head out.
It makes my eyes water occasionally. Yeah.
Interesting. Well, so that's interesting because, like, okay, so how do you guys feel about? Okay, in my opinion, I think that the lightsaber duels are amazing in the prequels. Like, say whatever you want about the prequels, the lightsaber fights are
Yeah.
dope.
Yeah.
So, do those give you the same effect, or are those easier to watch?
They were well choreographed. I agree with that, especially in episode 3. You know, the last.
Yes, the Battle of the
Yeah,
Heroes.
yeah. So that they were good. I like the pod racing too. It was simpler. It was a little bit more open out in the desert. But I know what you mean about the peripheral blur, and it actually kind of makes my eyes weep a little, like get watery. But it doesn't mean that I don't love it though. I just as far as episode 2 goes, I feel awful. I don't know that can't give you the right names, but Pastor Bob does have a connection to the actor who played Anakin in 2 and 3.
Really?
And I was
Hayden
actually living, Hayden Christensen. Thank you. He knows a family member of Hayden's, and
Wow.
I answered the phone when they called Sanctuary when Bob had the big house way back in '99. When this is just being produced, I think he had just gotten signed on, and they called. Hey, guess what? Hayden's gonna be Anakin. So that's a cool little backside to Star Wars there.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy. So, I think with talking about the special effects, and I think this will help segue into something else, is we talked a lot about the Mandalorian. I think if they would have gone the model of the Mandalorian special effects, obviously special effects have come a long way. So obviously but they also don't heavily rely on it either. And they did the perfect amount of mixing practical with special effects. And I feel like if they would have taken that with the prequels, it would have looked way better without all that CGI crazy eye-watering stuff. Because there was a lot, especially number 2 when they're chasing the assassin through the city and they're jumping off the sky cars or whatever those are, like the pods and stuff. Like that's like it makes you want to throw up a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. I'm with you.
Yeah, it's almost as if, hey, we've got a new thing that we can use, so let's use it to the nth degree.
Let's do it.
They did.
Used everywhere. But
dude,
have you all watched the behind the scenes yet, where all the directors and producers meet with Favreau and they kind of break apart?
No,
I have not.
Because they
but
got
you're
into
telling
the.
us.
Yeah, they got to watch the one on the effects and how they're really doing the Mandalorian, and it is a mixture of. I mean, it is 20 years ahead now, right? And they're filming this stuff in a bubble with a 360-degree video screen.
Yeah,
they're not filming those in the deserts. There's a couple of establishing shots, but they're in a little garage box.
It's like a circle.
Yeah,
isn't it?
And it's phenomenal. And they do a 45-minute episode and how the actors feel like you're really in the environment, and it's basically built on a gaming engine that this video screen.
Unreal.
It's unbelievable. So they have a couple of miniatures and some things that give it that old Star Wars feel, but I totally bought that they were out somewhere in the desert when they're on Tatooine, and the Mandalorian, but it was just really small sets with a couple of real things. So I encourage watch them. You guys, because it was
so
cool.
that brings us into something else too, because before we started, you were telling us about something else, and it goes well because we were talking about this topic a couple weeks ago about how it seems like shows and movies seem to be getting darker, and the messages are kind of without hope. So like Joker and things like that. But Larry, you were telling us something that you found out that George Lucas said to Jon Favreau. Is that correct?
Yes, yeah, and one of those, on the Legacy episode of the behind the scenes, Lucas said, "Look, the one thing that I want is that the stories always have hope in it, and that's really important, especially for young kids." And I'm paraphrasing, but it was basically that. And I guess, and I was like, wow, maybe it was so subtle at times. That was one of the reasons why I loved it so much, because everybody feels better when they're hopeful. It's just, you can't be down. And feel hopeful at the same time. You know, depression or all the negative emotions are associated with hopelessness. So that was really cool. I liked hearing that, and you know, watching them. Even like I haven't probably watched episode 2 in 15 years. You know,
Dang.
it was cool after watching the behind the scenes and learning about the Mandalorian and Favreau working with Lucas. You know, Lucas kind of popped in and out during the development of it and get his
Oh, that's
input.
awesome.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I don't know, but yeah. So the hope thing. I mean, of course, episode 4 is New Hope, but there were a couple that were that left you feeling like with a question mark. Like The Empire Strikes Back had kind of a ending. Like, dang.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And so did Revenge of the Sith too. I mean, because you
Yeah.
kind of
Right.
you know it, but I would say like Steve, this would be an interesting question for you because you watch Mandalorian, correct?
I'm about halfway through it.
Okay. Would you say when you like watch an episode, do you get the feeling of hope from each episode, or how do you feel when it comes to Mandalorian?
Yeah, the Mandalorian is more like the original Star Wars than I think anything since. I mean, you had a little bit of it with the in between films, like Rogue One and Solo.
Yeah.
But,
Little bit.
Yeah, but the Mandalorian is fantastic, and I, I know it sounds corny, but every time that Baby Yoda is on screen, it makes me smile.
Yeah.
And
Every time.
and it's just a feeling of warmth, and
Yeah.
and it's it's kooky. I know, because I know it's just an animatronic robot thing, but people who don't even watch Star Wars are buying that thing, and I've
Yeah.
got people coming into the shop at the moment asking, "Can you get them?" And I'm like, "I'm a second-hand shop. Why would I have these right now?" But there is that sense of hope and that sense of fun and enjoyment, and it brings a smile to people's faces, and that's the overwhelming thing that I found when you come out originally of Star Wars as a film. Every kid came out of that first film with a smile on his face.
Mm-hmm.
And they were, what about this? What about that? And the adults exactly the same. So I think it had that really good balance on it.
Mm-hmm.
And I better stop now because I'm waffling.
So this would be an interesting question because you both are parents. This would be interesting. Did you guys? Because obviously, like Larry, you mentioned that you showed Star Wars to your son, but like, did you guys see that message of hope impact your kids, or was it more just like a fun story? Or
yeah, that's a good question. I think it's a good if even there. Oh boy, that's. I think you hold on to it because now I didn't realize it. Even like my son's in his mid-20s, right? Yeah, he's happy. He loves his job, loves what he's doing, all that, and he's a video gamer and Star Wars. He's not really was in anything else, but I didn't realize the message until it was kind of presented the way Favreau did it. Like I never really said, "Oh, these leave me hopeful," but you look back and like I guess it did in a way, And then how it ties to the Mandalorian is like you see this super tough warrior taking a little bit of a shining to the Baby Yoda, and you're like, oh, he's going to end up being a dad and a tough guy too, and there's the hope, right? That he's not just a cold piece of steel that is a mindless warrior that lives by a creed and that's it. That he has feelings and then when you get into that positive emotion of love, hope seeps in there. Like you're hopeful, like he's gonna take this thing in and that. So like that, I'm just kind of basing so that it's there now that after the fact, I heard that said, and you look at some of the episodes, you can go, yeah, I get it now. But whether or not you realize it at the moment, I don't know. But just like, witnessing or loving on someone and trying to share the Lord with them, it just waters a seed, maybe. I don't know, that you don't even know is happening, maybe.
Yeah.
Until you get later in life, and like go watch like episodes 2 and 3 and then look at the American politics, and you're like, wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what Mary and I kept saying. This is like kind of like what we're watching on the news, right? The empire taking over the democracy, and so there was some weird kind of things there, too. But anyhow, that's all I got on hope.
Interesting. What about you, Steve?
What is it?
I'm interested in when I preach, I can preach from just about anything. It's just sounding weird, but I firmly believe that God has inspired all the creative arts, and I can. Like I've used Black Sabbath albums to preach from. I've preached the whole sermon on using the songs that Black Sabbath used when they were doing their last gig, and I've used Metallica's Master of Puppets to preach from. I've used Nirvana's Nevermind album to preach from. I've preached from films like Lord of the Rings and Star Wars and all sorts of things, and I find it so easy to preach from Star Wars, and you can relate that, and there's actually a book which is the Gospel According to Star Wars, which is a Christian book, and that. This inherent hope and inherent joy that Star Wars brings, I think, is fantastic, and there should be more of it. To me, it's we're getting into biblical talk here, but to me, films like The Joker are good in what they are, but you couldn't watch The Joker. I could watch a horror film more times than I could watch The Joker, because
interesting.
The Joker leaves you feeling desolate and isolated. And
I haven't seen that.
It's a phenomenal film, and if there was just one film like that, that would be okay. But there's a procession of films that are getting more and more dark like that, and that's sort of, to me, the enemy taking the life out of people through film, and I'm a big one for, if it doesn't affect you, carry on watching it or listening to it. But if it affects you, then don't watch it or don't listen to it. And I've got friends who can. I've got a mate who's a pastor, and he listens to the darkest black metal, and it just doesn't affect him, because he sort of sees it as operatic singing, and
Gotcha.
he doesn't listen to the words. And yet there's another friend who, when he listens to black metal, it almost makes him sort of violently sick.
And
it's
interesting.
It's not a one size fits all thing. And I think that the church has tried to make it a one size fits all, and we're going way off the point now. But
no, I think what you're saying is on point, because you mentioned a minute ago, nobody walks out of a Star Wars film feeling that way. You're either like, wow, that was awesome, or you're left wanting more. Based on what I've heard about the Joker, I started watching it on the plane, actually on a plane trip, and fell asleep and woke up, and we were landing, so I couldn't watch it. But I've heard the same thing, that it's like, wow, it's incredible, but take that in low doses,
Yeah. Well,
So
and I
there
think
is a spiritual tie to
the
that, I believe.
I think the interesting thing with George Lucas and Star Wars and Hope and Finding the Gospel in is like there's so much good in it. But I think what's interesting is like George Lucas himself, from what I know, is not a believer. Like he calls on a lot of Buddhist belief to when he makes the Force and stuff. But he also like he kind of made a hodgepodge of all sorts of stuff. Like he just like he made
Yeah.
Build-A-Bear with with everything basically. But I
Yeah.
think what's interesting is like you said, like there's something innate in all of us. Like, and I actually heard a pastor say this he wasn't into heavy metal. Like, he didn't have anything against it. He's just a normal Joe, like just a normal guy. And he made an observation where he's talking about it seems like right now in the modern day, more metalheads tend to become believers than other populations. And one of the reasons why is because metalheads. This is a huge generalization, but metalheads normally, typically, already are aware that there is a problem in the world. Like they're not disillusioned. They don't think that it's pretty and rainbows and stuff. And so it goes back to Star Wars. When you have that hope, it's almost like every single one of us knows that this world sucks. Like obviously there are good things in this world, but every single one of us knows that we are in a fallen world. Whether we believe in God or not, we know that something is not as it should be. And we're seeing that all over the place right now today. And so it's interesting is like those movies like Star Wars, even if it's not even made by a believer, just seeing true hope will can stir up someone's heart to be like, man, is this, I want that. Like, but it's like, it's not just, oh, I want that. It's like, this is like real. Like this is pointing to something else. And obviously we believe that hope is Jesus, but like, once again, we're going like hardcore into this, but like, but it's just like, I do think like, it's one of those things where it's like, just an act of beauty or an act of art can stir the heart to do that. And like, for example, I'm not going to give away the details of this, but one of the episodes of Mandalorian blew my mind when I watched it. This is season 2, so I won't give stuff away, but basically the non-spoiler plot is that like he has to go on a mission. He says that he's going to do something for somebody. It becomes too difficult and he decides he's going to quit. But as he decides he's going to quit, the person reminds him of that he's a Mandalorian and that Mandalorians keep their word. And when he hears that, he changes and he decides he's going to finish the mission no matter how hard it is. Now, what I think is so amazing about that, if you put like the gospel lens on, like your gospel glasses, like be like, oh, sick. What's amazing is like you read in different parts of the Bible where you see people when Paul has to write to the Corinthians who are doing awful things and all these people who are just doing terrible things. One of the things that he does sometimes he does put people into place, sometimes he corrects them, but a lot of the times he reminds them who they are in Christ, right? So it's like when that happened in that show, I was blown away because it's like, how did she encourage the guy? Because she reminded him of who he was.
Yeah.
And that made him act like who he was called to be. And like stuff like that where it's like, even just that is amazing. And obviously we're reading into it. I don't think they wrote it for that reason, but it's like, that is amazing. That's an amazing message.
It is. It is. Yeah. And it's cool to be able to tie that together. So we're almost at 30 minutes. That was a good way to wrap it up, but I got to do something with you, Hayden, on camera. I have to do this. Stand by one second. I'll be right back.
All right.
Yeah,
I know. I feel like I would do a drum roll, but I don't know how long he's going to be gone, so it'd just be like super... just go on for like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So there's one thing we have to talk about. I know that this is a comic book show, and it's not a sports show. But I've been. So you know what that means. Technically, we're supposed to be mortal enemies. Right?
I mean,
because of what you got there. I'm glad.
Oh, right way.
Oh, the Patriots.
The Patriots and the Bills. Just you're taught, we can't stand the Patriots in Western Europe.
I've
just
finished watching. I'm in the middle of watching NFL now. I taped the 7-hour special, and I'm watching through the week.
Dang. Yeah,
it's not the
to
same.
be fair,
isn't it silly watching the games with like made up crowd noise and nobody in the stands?
Yeah.
Like I have a hard time. Like the players have to be affected too, not having.
I doubt they're playing at the level that they normally would play. To be full disclaimer, I haven't watched football for like 4 years. But it's one of those things where I just like, out of all things to do, like I just like stop, and also too the fact that Tom Brady left for the Buccaneers. Like I'm not even gonna touch that.
I think Tom Brady's doing really well.
Yeah, he's doing.
Yeah,
he's
I'm glad he is.
And your team isn't doing so well.
No, but the Bills are doing pretty good here. Oh,
Yeah,
upside down. Yeah,
upside down.
That's exciting though that we're doing well for a change. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, this is cool, guys. Thanks for having me on as a surprise guest.
Yeah, thank you again. I had a blast.
I like talking about
you
Hope
guys.
and Star Wars. Yeah, this was cool.
Yeah,
I know. I look forward to when we can get Phil on next time, and then we can finish up the prequels. But I had a blast today.
Yeah,
it was
same
great.
here. Nice talking about graphics and hope.
Woot woot and football, America.
Yeah, that's right. All right, guys.
Well,
cool.
Yeah.
Goodbye,
See you
everybody.
next time.
Bye.
All right.